Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Xah Talk Show. Today is 2021 and June 25th, 2021 June 25th. Now it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon San Francisco time. Welcome to another episode of Xah Talk Show. And today I don't have a topic. I was going to do some Wolfram language mathematical coding, but I was debating with Dion about economics, crypto currency and stuff, and I got distracted. And now I don't know what am I going to talk about. I didn't prepare. So if you have questions, comments, just post it. Okay, I'd love to see your comments. Your comments direct what we're gonna talk. Okay. So otherwise, when there's no topic, the easiest thing is to start to work on Emacs, because for Emacs, I'm ready to code. I have lots of things to say. I have tons, without preparation, I don't need to prepare. So for example, let's go to XahFly keys. Now it's 4,600 lines of code. XahFly keys, fantastic. Okay, so if there's no topic, I'm just gonna work on stuff like keys. So what I need to do is to add delete selection mod. Okay, so you can see here delete selection mod, and let's show some. Let's do some Microsoft browser, the browser you love. Okay, let's magnify to 110 magnitude of font, and back to Emacs. Juk. Fantastic key binding and set up the most efficient system possible. Now go to the bottom, paste that here. So the thing we need is this one. You are looking at the source code of XahFly keys, and I want to add this directive into it. So what I do is list matching lines. Let's see if there is if it's already there. No, it's not. So I'm just going to add this here. So add this here. So where do I want to add it? Okay, comment. Okay, comment. Okay, let's see. I want to add when XahFly keys is on. Yes, add to this section somewhere. Okay, define minor mod XahFly keys. Yes. Add hook and so on and blah 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 and blah blah blah. Okay, coding, fantastic. Where do I want to add it? Define minor mod. Okay, so that is that. Let's just add it here. Okay, paste that. Delete selection mod. Okay, now this is, if you don't know, when this is on in Emacs, that means when you have a selection, then you start to type, it will override it. Okay, however, if it's off, that doesn't happen. Okay, this is oddity of Emacs. For example, selected, we just we evaluate this code, select whatever selected, then start to type. It does not override. It just add wherever the cursor is at. So that's not what we want. This is delete selection mod is a I want to add it, so it's gonna be part of XahFly keys. Screw Emacs convention. Let me tell you about Emacs convention. Emacs convention is that major mod, you are not supposed to activate other minor mods. This is a so-called a minor mod. It's just a preference. Okay, you are not supposed to do it, but in general. But for XahFly keys, I think it's it's actually suitable to turn it on. Okay, let's just turn it on. Okay, now go to the top, and you see the version. Let's update the version name. Okay, add today's date, including the second. I use that as part of the version format. Okay, so version 13.12. okay, fantastic. Now gonna save it, call match it status. Okay, so let's see, let's gonna commit let's see. Okay, that's the changed part. That's good. Okay, stage it. We are using Git, which is the last screw up of the Unix philosophy tradition. Okay, now turn on. Okay, turn on delete selection mod. Okay, commit, push it. What? Push it. Okay, comments. Hello, Btix. So Btix, do you have a question? How did you find me? Because of Emacs, or is it because keyboard, or because of the some other things, my website or something, Unicode and stuff? So it's committed. So stuff like keys. Okay, so it's committed. We did that. So Btix say something. Okay, no topic. Let's do random then. So we did that. Okay, so now go to XAH Talk Show. Go to this page, topic notes, delete selection mod, cut it. Go to Talk Show, today's Talk Show, and paste it. Okay, we added delete selection mod to XAH keys. And maybe create a page of init tutorials for it. Okay, so that's a thing we need to do. Okay, so that means go to Emacs Blog. So I need to update, because I write a bunch of tutorials. So on this section, Emacs init is all about Emacs init files. Okay, BTX says, I found you because of your website. It was fun to read. Okay, which part? Like, because I have few, I have 6,000 articles. Part of it is on mathematics. Part of it is on programming and programming language design. Part of it is programming language tutorials, including Linux, and part of it is lots of programming rants. And part of it is English literature. For example, wordy English. Okay, let me show you some random talk. We haven't talked about non-technical topic for a long time, so let's talk about that. Second Life, okay, XAH Second Life. So I'm gonna show you some of my other websites, which I'm going to merge. I'm gonna merge all these to the xahli.info domain. It's a long story why I split them, like about 10 years ago. So you found me via my programming stuff website or other parts. So Second Life. So this is about Second Life. Anyway, so let's where are we? So we were doing, let's see. Okay, so yeah, Emacs. Let's go back to Emacs, because unless you post whatever you guys post, and I'll talk about that. Okay, so now I'm just gonna walk my daily walk. So my Emacs init file tutorial, I need to add a section or a page about the delete selection, possibly, maybe, because. So this section or these tutorials are about how do you configure Emacs. Emacs, you have literally thousands of configurations. Oh, you are trying to learn Emacs? It's a difficult journey. Yes, indeed. And you might just as well use Vscode, which I think is pretty good. But if you choose Emacs, of course, the reason will be the advantage. If you choose Emacs, you have to spend a lot of time, like let's say an hour a day, for let's say half a year or a year, to really master Emacs, because otherwise you don't know what to do. It's hard to use. But once you know it, especially if you know some Emacs Lisp, it's very powerful. But however, I think actually, like I talked about this before. Okay, let me show you. Okay. So this is Emacs. So you can see on this page where you have Visual Studio Code, which is using 350 megabytes of memory, and Emacs, which is only using 22 megabytes of memory. And let me do a live demo. So okay, so let's go to the processes. Okay, so you can see here is Emacs. Can you magnify this? Yeah. Network disk memory. Okay, let's click on that. So Emacs is using 59 megabytes of memory, and let's start Vscode. Okay, let's show in Vscode. Open in Vscode. We're just gonna launch it. So you are seeing this Emacs Blog file. Let me go to the top so you can see. You see, you are seeing the exact same file in Emacs and in Vscode. And in Vscode, you see this very long. On the right panel, Vscode has this tree thing. By the way, that's also available on Emacs, but it's not so good. I have an article of that. But Vscode, okay, so let me talk about Vscode versus Emacs. I talked about before. So I've been using Emacs for 20 years now, living it. On the other hand, Vscode, I haven't used it much. The total time I spend in Vscode maybe is just 1 hour, so I haven't used it much. I barely know what to, what keys is the directory, but it's easy to use. Okay, basically, if I start to use it an hour a day, within a month I'll be pretty good. I'll know all the features. That's the difference between Emacs and Vscode. In Emacs, if you just begin to use it, you cannot. It's a pain in the ass. You have to start to read lots of tutorials. So that's the thing. Beginning, Vscode is super easy. Emacs is super difficult. But what about if you study Emacs for 1 hour a day for a year? Will your the ability to use Emacs, will Emacs become better than VS Code? That's the question. And my opinion of that is not necessarily. Okay, actually, so this is opinion contrary to many Emacs fans or Emacs expert will tell you. They will tell you typically, okay, once you spend certain amount of time to master Emacs, you will become incredibly productive, and you will be able to customize Emacs far beyond VS Code. That's what Emacs fanatics say. Okay, I don't think that's true. Because in VS Code, VS Code is new. It's a new technology. JavaScript is a few magnitude. The power of JavaScript, the language, it's written in JavaScript. The power of JavaScript language is a few magnitude beyond Emacs Lisp, okay? And it's improving every day. Every year there's a new version of JavaScript. And for each Emacs user, there are 10,000, more than 10,000. There are 100,000 users of VS Code or JavaScript, okay? For each Emacs Lisp coder, there are 10,000 JavaScript coders. So in terms of knowledge and expertise, it's beyond Emacs and users. Okay, so so the VS Code and also VS Code, or Atom editor, these are new. Well, Emacs, you have 30 years baggage, starting from 1985 or so. So you have 30 years of baggage, truly baggage, because all the terminology is like 30 years ago. And the algorithms, the knowledge about computing algorithms, implementation, CPU, and so on, in 30 years, there's tremendous improvement. So VS Code is designed from the ground up, written from the ground up about 8 years ago, beginning with the Atom editor, okay? Atom editor. So if you can look up atom.io, okay, I remember the day they announced from GitHub. This is before GitHub was bought by Microsoft. GitHub mentioned, they announced that, oh, we think there's still room to create a new editor, and so they did Atom based on JavaScript. They, in fact, in their original announcement, so when was that? 2014, okay, 7 years ago. When they announced it, Atom, they say, we believe, something like that. They said that we believe there's still room to create a editor. There's already Emacs, but we think we can do actually better today. That's what they said. So they created Atom with JavaScript as the foundational scripting language to build the editor, and also the scripting language, for modifying the editor. So Atom, then and of course it's open source. It's open source code. Then after a few years, they created the Electron framework. So guys, if you don't know, the Electron framework, it came from Atom. It's a split off of the Atom text editor. Okay, let me talk about this. So okay, so I want to talk about this, Emacs versus Vscode. Okay, but first of all, let me read the comments. Sorry, not quite fair, because Vscode looks gorgeous, while Emacs looks like GNU done by default. Okay, that's true. I find beauty in simplicity. Also, you can customize to your liking, okay? Okay, you guys go on, argue about it. But let me tell you, let me talk about Atom versus, the Emacs versus Vscode fully. Let me give you my full view of the thing, and including some history. So Atom began 7 years ago, and in the process, they created Electron, which is the framework of JavaScript. There are a lot of things I'm gonna say. I'm gonna tell you. Okay, so Atom editor. So how does it work? Atom editor is basically a Google Chrome browser, Chromium. Google Chrome browser. Using the Google Chrome browser. Why is that? Because browser and JavaScript technology, they have become so advanced that browsers essentially can do anything. Like you can view pictures, you can watch movies, YouTube, any pictures or any text you can, there are text editors written in as a website. For example, what is it called? Lighting table. Back in 10 years ago, it was all over the place. Nerds are talking about it. Light table, right? Was it that or something? I don't remember. Who remembers that editor's lighted table? What not? What is this? No, it's not that. Okay, so anyway, there's a editor. There's quite a lot, actually, tens of editors written in a browser. That means you go to a website, then you can start editing. Actually, this is needed. It's used on Reddit. It's used on Stack Overflow. It's used on lots of websites. It's a need. So anyway, so JavaScript and the browser technology has become so advanced that they can do almost basically anything. So that's the idea. Where Atom, it's just a browser, Google Chrome browser. Browser with JavaScript, and they hide, for example, they hide the URL bar, they hide, the bookmark, all these things. So it looks like an editor. I don't have Atom installed, but anyway, so Atom 7 years ago. From GitHub, they created that. Then in the process, they created Electron, the framework. Electron is basically the framework. And Electron got a life of its own because it becomes so powerful and so useful that Electron becomes the framework for anyone to write, to use JavaScript to write applications for any operating system or phone. So you can use Electron to write application for Windows, for Mac, for Linux, for anything, for iPhone, iOS or Android phone, And in fact, you see, you look at Vscode, Vscode is, very, very useful, very powerful application. It's written in Atom. I mean, it's written in Electron, okay, and lots of others. So in fact, Electron has not just become, a framework for JavaScript. Electron is today the most powerful, the most easy to use, and the most, basically the best cross-platform framework. Okay, so if you want to write some application, you want it to be compatible and looks exactly the same in Mac or Windows or Linux or on the phone, what do? Use Atom. Okay, not the GNOME GTK, not the Qt even. Okay, all these cross-platform, you can search for cross-platform. Okay, you go to Wikipedia, then there's a bunch of cross-platform. What are these? Cross-platform for mobile apps. Okay, I'm not talking about mobile apps. Okay, but anyway, you go to GTK, okay, GTK Wikipedia. Then you'll find the link to all the other cross-platform toolkits, okay, widget toolkits, okay. Usually there's a list, okay. GTK is the worst crap that nobody uses. Only the GNOME people, they supposedly they are they are cross-platform and all that. Actually, no. In open source, there's lots of lies until you actually dig into, if you, try to do it yourself, try to write a application cross-platform, application for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and also for the phone. Try to do it, and try to use GTK. Get the information yourself. Try to use GTK. Try to learn it, or use Qt. Okay, or use several others, or Electron using JavaScript. Okay, here's so where's I'm kind of unfocused now. So anyway, on Wikipedia, you'll find the link where they list all the cross-platform, toolkits, and also you can use Java with their Java whatever. So all these, because there's someone who wrote an article. In fact, it turns out today that Electron happens to be the best. How do you judge? Well, judge by many things. How much effort you have to spend on it. How much, how will they actually cross-platform, or would they be, will the speed be the same? For example, if you use GTK, for example, maybe it works great on Linux, but it doesn't work well on Windows, things like that. So it turns out, the Electron is actually the best cross-platform framework now. So that's the story of Electron. It's split from the Atom effort. Then because it's open source, the Microsoft Vscode. Let's search for Microsoft Vscode, okay? Let's search for, is it there, Visual Studio Code. Now, I don't know what's the history of Visual Studio Code. I don't know. I don't know the history. So why did they create it? I don't know. I haven't been. But anyway, Visual Studio Code is today basically now, I guess, the most popular editor now. So anyway, so that's the background. I gave you some background and history of Visual Studio Code. Okay. So let me repeat. So Emacs versus VS Code, which one is better? According to Emacs fanatics, they will say Emacs, once you learn it, once you spend 100 hours to really master it, it will be much faster than VS Code and much more powerful and much more customizable. I don't agree. Okay, like I mentioned before, I don't. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 90% sure. I do not think Emacs would be that much better than VS Code, even if you have spent like full time to study Emacs. Like me, for example, I'm you can call me a Emacs list master, But I believe there's a high possibility that if starting from today, I spend, let's say, 2 hours to use VS Code and spend 2 hours, every day to study how to use JavaScript to extend it. I already know JavaScript very well. I'm a JavaScript expert. But, if I spend 2 hours a day to learn how the VS Code, the structure, the architecture, how to extend it. If I do that, after a few months, I believe I might say VS Code is just as extensible. Just as extensible and powerful, and even possibly even much more better than Emacs. Okay, that's my claim. Now, this claim is contrary to most Emacs fanatics' belief. Now, let me justify that a bit. Again, I haven't done the work on VS Code, so I don't actually know for certain. But okay. So how many people are watching? Light table. Okay. Oh, Dion. Hey, Dion. So light table. Let's search for that. A few years ago, there is all the nerds are talking about it. Light table. Oh, this is the best. This is going to be the best editor. And before that, it's TextMate. They come and go like every 5 years. So so light table. I do remember like 5 years ago. Oh, how they look now. Like all the nerds are talking about, oh, this is the future or something like that. I never even looked into. But okay, let me get back to the VS Code versus Emacs. So like I said, I haven't spent time on VS Code, but I highly believe that if I do actually spend time to study VS Code, I may find it actually to be much more powerful, better than Emacs, period. Not just ease of use, but power and efficiency and all that. Okay, that is that is how I regard VS Code. Now, the reason I haven't spent time to study that because I don't have time. I need to study math and all that, and I'm too old. I'm getting old, so I don't have that many years left. So if I get on into VS Code, that basically means throw away my 20 years experience with Emacs and stuff. Okay, so that is my overview of how I think of Emacs versus VS Code. But however, this is important. Okay, let me switch my camera to my face because I'm not coding much anyway. Okay, so this is wide screen. People, when people buy camera, they want wide screen, but for me, I don't want wide screen. So anyway, however, there is a major problem with VS Code. Let me tell you what that is, okay? Because Emacs is created by nerds, therefore everything is extremely tight. Okay, so that is why you see Emacs uses memory. What percentage? 58 megabytes. While if when I just started VS Code, it only has one file and it's already 370 megabytes of memory. So you might be wondering, so why is that? That is because, well, you might say because VS Code is based on a browser, but this is not gonna go away. Okay, so let me summarize. So first of all, I think VS Code is not necessarily it may actually be more powerful and more customizable than Emacs. That's one thing, if you spend enough time to study it. On the other hand, VS Code is a product of a giant corporation team at Microsoft, and the source code for VS Code and because it's a product of giant corporation, you are going to be stuck with a problem like this: inefficient use of memory and lots of crap, lots of bloat. That's going to be part of VS Code for certain. So even though if you master it, the JavaScript, the language, the embedded language may be a magnitude more powerful and faster than Emacs Lisp, which is true, but you are stuck with a situation where it's gonna be bloated. That thing you probably cannot avoid. Not just because the electron, the browser is using so much memory, but it's going to have bloats everywhere. Because it's a product of a corporation, team. Programmers in a team, they don't care. They care. It's just like you. You go to work, you do whatever, you fuck around, like watch XahTV's video while doing work. Then you go home, you get money. You get paid. Then next year, if maybe the company don't like you anymore, or you quit, you go work for Facebook. You open source fanatic fucks. When there comes to money, yeah, you're gonna run for it. Or maybe you work on something. Microsoft says, "Oh, your product is fantastic. We pay you $10 million. You're gonna sell right away." Forget about your open source fanaticism. Fuck open source. Anyway, so VS Code. So because it's a product of a corporation, you're gonna have that problem, bloat everywhere, and it's not going to. It can only get worse and worse and worse. Okay. That's a problem with VS Code. Not because the technology, okay? The technology of VS Code is a magnitude superior than Emacs. Fuck. Because Emacs is 30 years old of baggage. You look at the source code, see, and there are experts of Emacs Lisp source code. They talk about it. It's crap, 30 years of baggage. Still works, though. Still works. That's the key. Like, you dropped your sausage on the ground, but you are poor and you don't have money. It's still good. You can still eat it. That's Emacs. 30 years old of baggage crap. While the VS Code is new. New is in general, when it comes to technology, new is almost always better. New languages. If there's a 10 years difference, new is always better. Because because when technology changes very fast, you have new assumptions, new CPU, new architecture, new hardware. So VS Code, the technology is a magnitude better than Emacs. However, VS Code is a corporate thing, so you're gonna have bloat, and it's gonna get worse and worse. While Emacs will not. Emacs has its own problems. The GNU people that they have like corporate. They have their community. They have lots of organization problems. But one thing it is not going to have is bloat, like the corporate software, because bloat happens in corporation software because the programmers come and go. Nobody really cares. While Emacs, typically you have one or a few who are very concerned about it, oversee the whole thing. Okay, that's, I don't know, I'm rambling all over. So, okay, let me ramble another thing, okay? If you ask Emacs user, so I give you my opinion about Emacs versus VS Code. Let me repeat again. VS Code technology, the technology of VS Code, Chrome browser and JavaScript is a magnitude superior than Emacs because Emacs is very old, lots of baggage. And also JavaScript, for each Emacs users or Emacs Lisp coders, there are 10,000 JavaScript experts, okay, all over the world. So, and there are, and Emacs, what's the financial support for Emacs? Maybe a few $1,000s a month or something, donation. But what about the financial? Where does the financial support for JavaScript and Chrome? $100 billion every month, something like that. Okay, you get the idea. You get the idea because that's a you know, that's you know, Google is the biggest organization in entire human history. You know, they send, you know, they have people in space, they control everything. And what is the technology Google rely on? Google Chrome and JavaScript. There's money talking. So if you want to compare, you know, I know a lot of nerds, you know, you want to compare Emacs Lisp. Emacs Lisp is crass, you know, there's no comparison to talk about. JavaScript and Chrome technologies a few magnitude beyond Emacs can ever will be. So technology-wise, Vscode is much better. However, it's got a problem of because it's from a corporation. Now, one more thing I want to mention: when a lot other Emacs nerds, you know, I'm one. There are a lot others, right? You see their blogs, you see their YouTube. They are much more popular than me. You know, you see them, so they will say, you know, they will also have opinions about VS Code and versus Emacs, and typically they'll say, nah, VS Code is crap for multiple reasons. First of all, they don't like Microsoft, so whatever it's from Microsoft, they don't like it. They're gonna badmouth about it. That's it. It's for Microsoft, they don't like it. Doesn't matter, even though it's 100% open source, they still gonna badmouth it to death. But it is because these nerds, the open source, they are dying, and Microsoft and Google, they are become more and more powerful because these open source fuckheads, because they don't know what they're talking about. They just think, you know, if they say this, they keep saying it, it'll become better. Emacs will become more popular or something. No, on the contrary, because when you say something, you don't know what you're talking about, bad things will happen. Like JavaScript and PHP language, you know, the hackers despise JavaScript and PHP, and JavaScript and PHP became the most used language on earth. JavaScript and PHP. And these two languages are exactly the hacker types hate. The Unix philosophy, you know, they hate because they don't know what they're talking about. They think as long as they just chant open source, you know, ideology, chant, oh great, Emacs is the greatest editor. How you know, you can do so everything in Emacs. You keep saying that, and when it's not true, it doesn't fit reality, you're gonna get worse. And Emacs is happening, you know. That's my opinion. But anyway, when you ask, you know, when you look at the other, this is what I'm interested, you know, other Emacs nerds. Many of them I respect. I very much respect their their know-how of how, you know, Emacs Lisp. You know, there are a lot of Emacs Lisp coders who knows Emacs Lisp better than me, and also a lot people, Emacs hackers, they know the Emacs C code. You know, they code C, I don't code C. So I respect their opinion. But so I want to know, what do other Emacs nerds think about Emacs versus VS Code, you know? So I've looked, but you know, the problem is, you know, first of all, because VS Code is for Microsoft, and just because that, usually they'll just start to badmouth VS Code. So that's not the information I want. I want the real, you know, the good information. You know, that kind of attitude is wrong. It's bad. I want solid comparison of technology. Let's forget about politics, okay? I want solid comparison of someone, for example, someone who studied Emacs for 10 years, Emacs Lisp, and who also contributed for 10 years, for example, on VS Code, JavaScript, or Atom, you know, Atom editor. If there exists such a person, I want to know their opinion very much, and I will pay attention to what they say. But however, the sad thing is, you know, when I look at the other Emacs nerds, their opinion about VS Code, and if you look at, you know, or ask them, have you ever coded JavaScript, or have you looked into VS Code, you know, the architecture and so on? Typically, no. this Emacs, the Emacs phonetics. No, they don't know nothing. So that's so if you actually know someone, I have a friend, David Cavello. Okay, he loves C programming, C plus C and C plus plus. He worked with me on Ergo Emacs. David Cavello. He's the creator of the Sprite. He's the author of Sprite. So I know him for by now 12, 13 years. We worked on Ergo Emacs before. So he's a big C and C++ fan. He's a C++ fan. And he knows Windows programming very well. The Sprite is entirely written by him. Okay. So what was I going to say? So he has used VS Code somewhat. Okay. He's not a open source fanatic. He's more like practical. What was I going to say? So, but anyway, So I wanted to know if someone who have contributed, in both Emacs Lisp and also VS Code, then if you know that guy, tell me. Okay, I want to know his opinion. I would pay attention to him. But I haven't, I don't know any such person, except David Cavello told me a little bit about, he tried VS Code. He told me a little bit, but not much about VS Code. So I'm very much looking for someone who really, have looked into also both Emacs and VS Code. I would pay attention. I would, respect their opinion. But unfortunately, like all my life, my argument with tech geekers, when you actually ask them, sometimes it happens, ask them, did you actually do that X or Y you hate? Their answer is no. What the fuck? Very frustrating. Okay, I think I'm rambling all over. Maybe I should shut down. So what are you guys saying? Table, Beatrix says you should try to change to VS Code exclusively for a week, and note if you notice any loss in your I mean, that of course that's a thing. If I try to use VS Code exclusively, not even exclusively, if I just try to use it an hour a day, that's 1 hour a day gone. It, like I said, I don't have much time. I'd rather spend the time on math or Mathematica or Wolfram language. I don't know when I'm going to get on VS Code. Dion says, if you like Emacs, you eat 30 years of old sausage. I used to work as a solo dev. It's amazing how much bloat just one extra developer injects into a project. That's true. The only way to avoid it is to spend more time debating the design of your software than you do coding it. Okay. What are we talking about? God. I think this is a bad video. I kind of lost some sense of what the things I want to say about whatever different things. Oh, so I like to Kapustin says, Alexander says, I would like to try some interesting programming language. Do you think Common Lisp is a good choice? No. I talk about that many times in my YouTube video. Many times about which programming language to learn. So if you have not watched it, you probably should, because too many of my videos, the whole hour is about which language to choose. And I can show you a few. by now I have few hundred videos. It's even confusing. So you might want watch this one. Okay, this is about characteristics of Haskell. Okay, the characteristics of Haskell, Python, Lisp, Mathematica, and Stephen Wolfram. Okay, and there's another one about which language to choose. Okay, so the best thing is actually just go to XahTalk because on my website, XahTalk videos of XahTalk XahTV, there it is, XahTV. So here is a list of all my talk shows with their date. So let's search for programming basics. Okay, 2021 April 1st, basics of Wolfram language, Richard Stallman, functional programming, Java, Perl, Python. Okay, so that one is also good. 2020 September 10th, programming philosophy of too many libraries, algorithmic mathematical art. Okay, this one is also pretty good, especially the algorithmic mathematical art part. Okay, this one, 2020 May 23rd, which programming language is worth learning, and the future of Lisp. Okay, let's see what this one is about. Okay, yeah, I think this one, you might watch this one. Let's go to YouTube. Let's see how many people watched it. Okay, stop. Look at that fuck on the left, on the upper left corner. Did you see that? The Google propaganda. Fuck. Okay, so let's see. XahTV. Okay, which programming language is worth learning? Now, how many views? Stop. What's going on? Okay, 2,000. No, this is one of my popular video. 2,200 views. So watch this one. Yeah, which programming language is worth learning? I remember I kind of put this one on my homepage, something like that. So Common Lisp, no, Common Lisp is the last language you want to try. But you are asking for Common Lisp is probably, you like Common Lisp, you probably want, okay, if you want to go with Lisp, I rather recommend Racket. Okay, learn some Scheme Lisp, Racket or Scheme Lisp, not Common Lisp. Common Lisp has no future. Absolutely zero future. It's and the fact you asking about it, not many people know about Common Lisp even. Like nobody knows. The only people who know Common Lisp is a very, very, very niche Emacs, among Emacs and among Lisp, programmers. And to them they still think, oh, maybe Common Lisp is a good choice. It's already dead. Yeah, there are still applications running Common Lisp, but it's dead, and there's no possible reason for it to revive. Okay, so if you want to learn Lisp, get on with Clojure. Okay. Okay, why Clojure is dense is one of my essay about hacking. Okay, you go to this page, Complan Pervin. I recommend all these videos. There it is. This is a video I mentioned. These two I mentioned before. These are better ones among my talk show videos. Okay, so you go to, so you want watch these two. Okay, for languages, especially this one. Okay, Common Lisp is no future and dead, and also it's a crap. It's garbage. Purely from even just technical considerations, Common Lisp is worst crap possible, the worst crap fuck possible. Again, the topic of Lisp programming language, I've done over 10 videos about it. Each one is 1 hour about some aspect of the technical detail of the Lisp language, because that's the Lisp language is one of my thing. That's that have in the past 20 years I dig into the Lisp language, all sort of details, and I have tons of articles about it. So anyways, yeah, if you want to learn, watch my videos, okay? Like instead of me, I'm just going to tell you common Lisp instead. What's the use of that? But you watch my video instead, because I talked about that for 1 hour, why and the reasons and so on. So anyway, if you want to learn Lisp closure, okay, you might get a job with that, and it's okay. It's pretty good, except it runs on Java, JVM, Java crap. Closure and Racket, okay? I don't have a tutorial for Racket, but Closure and Racket, okay? Now, if you want to learn about some language design issues, watch, these CompLang perving, okay? Lots of, I have a few hundred articles on, and on Lisp. Now, again, like I said, I've done tens of videos on Lisp language. So watch these too. For example, the better videos I put on my website, but it's hard to maintain because I kind of stopped doing that because I do too many videos. Anyway, so on this section, on Lisp, you'll find a bunch of articles written in the past 20 years on Lisp, and 2 videos I talk about that. So then you have syntax soup issues. And this section, collection of articles which focus on the syntactical aspect of programming languages, and there are 2 videos on that. Then there's semantic noodle, again another article on programming languages and their culture, Perl, Python, Ruby. Okay, these are programming language issues related to semantics. Okay. Then you have a section dedicated to the jargons of software industry, OOP jargons, list comprehension, lambda, REPL, closure, currying, tail recursion, asynchronous, JavaScript, instance of object, instance my ass. These programmers, they have no idea what they're talking about. Including the Lisp coders jargon. What are they? Currying, tail recursion, recursively, anyway. Okay, I'm rambling all over. So is it good or is it bad? I feel like this video is no good. So there's then documentation. Okay, documentation is my obsession in my life because I'm obsessed reading documentations. I read too many. Okay, and I collect documentations. I read word for word. So these all articles kind of I collected together on documentation, 20 articles also over the past 20 years, documentations, and in this you can see. I can talk about this for a few hours, just documentation issues. Maybe I start to talk about this a little bit, okay? So what do you get from this kind of, what kind of thing do you talk about documentation? Why are you, what kind of things are there to talk about? Doc is just the documentation. What do you, okay, I can explain, that, and then I can talk about this for 10 hours. Documentation, first of all, there's writing skill, technical writing. So that by itself is a 10 hours topic, technical writing. Writing is a 10 hours, writing is a lifelong topic. You go to university, there's a literature, major in literature. Then or most students, you have to take writing 101. Then it involves literature, then there's poetry, there's different type of writing, there's constraint writing, then there's languages, which are writing systems. This takes a few lifetimes of study, and you can see, unless you are an empire, you live for 1,000 years, then you can master something about writing systems and writing and Unicode. Anyway, so technical writing is, one kind of study. Then there's organization, and there's also computer documentation. The format, for example, function. Okay, function. When you write a function, when you try to document document a function. You probably seen in PHP documentation, in Python documentation, in Lisp documentation. For example, a function, usually you have several parameters. Some are optional, some has default values, some are positional arguments, some are keyword arguments. So there's a question: how do you let me show you examples. Okay, here. Okay, so here is the example from Python documentation. So you can see, they use those brackets as, kind of to indicate optional arguments. So that's one way. But if you look around, like consider this is a task. Look around how, first of all, think about how functions, what are possible functions, how they. Okay, this is about kind of a syntax and formatting issue. How do you document functions? When a function have, so Python is one way, and this way is very typical. So then you have an example from PHP. They also use these square brackets to indicate optional arguments. Then you have an example from JavaScript. What is this? Yeah, JavaScript Mozilla. Then you have example from the Wolfram language, Stephen Wolfram, the certified genius, Wolfram language. So you can see there are issues about documentation, about the formatting of documentation functions formatting. So that's one issue. Formatting itself is another entire issue, because over the past 10, 20 years, each programming language, they pick a specific technology to write their documentation. Some of them pick LaTeX in the beginning, but that kind of died out. Nobody is using TeX or LaTeX to document a programming language now. Then Python switched to whatever. I have articles about that, but I don't remember now. Python used what is the documentation system used by Python? Then Ruby has one. Ruby used what is it called? Some I don't remember. I have to look up. So Ruby used the technology for documentation. Emacs, of course, use the granddaddy, the tech info system. So why are there so many software for documentation to write documentation? That's because it's a very complex issue. It involves organization. Mostly it involves formatting, the output format, the input formatting. So why are there so many different formatting? What's good and bad? Why? That's another question. You can spend a year just to study the formatting of text, or that gets us into HTML versus XML versus HTML5 versus SGML. Why are they? Why? What's the difference? Why do you need all that? Who invented them, and so on. So formatting, that's another issue. The documentation, okay. Anyway, so but there's a huge amount of issue. The style, okay. So we talked about technical writing. Then there is also the writing style. Now, in terms of content, okay, we talked about formatting of a function, so that's part of formatting. We also talk about formatting of the entire documentation and formatting systems and software. So that's another entire different issue. Now, about the content, those are kind of formatting. Now, about the content, there's a technical writing, right? So what constitutes good technical writing, okay? There's a little bit debate sometimes, okay? So technical writing and how to be good at technical writing, that's another chapter, okay? How to be a good technical writer. Okay, that's another thing, okay? By the way, many of these issues, there's no like one answer, depending on just like writing, depending on who do you ask. Some expert writers, they have their opinion, they think this way is the best writing. Some have a different opinion, but in general, they might converge a bit, okay? But on some details, they may disagree. But anyway, so formatting, then the content. So technical writing, how to write a good one. Besides that, there's also a matter of style, because two different authors, they can write a very different, entirely different writing style. You can feel it when you read it. but both of them are good. Okay, then it also depends on what kind of person you are, what kind of approach you like, you prefer, you know, especially on programming languages, because they are very diverse. So maybe for certain language, certain style is preferred. Anyway, so this also relate to the organization. For example, in PHP, it's kind of organized on function. It's just like you can find the function you want, organization organized around function, essentially. And JavaScript is organized. Java, the language is organized. You know, I can show you the Java documentation. But if I do, then it'll take more time to search for it. You know, Java documentation. Oh, now did they have a new phase? Wait, technical documentation. What the fuck? Java documentation have always been very fucking complex. Fuck. Java components. I want to get to the API. Fuck. Where is it? Licensing information. Fuck Oracle. Industries. What? Ah, fuck. Let's just search for Java API. They call it the Sun Microsystem SCUM. They started to call their documentation. They call their Java as API, but Java is not really API. Sun Microsystem SCUM abused it. Okay, here it is. Here is the conventional, you know, the official Java documentation. They are organized around classes because Java is a, you know, class-based language. So you can see this is how you navigate. You know, then you have a class, you have, you know, parents and children, and you have methods, field, field summary, constructor summary, the fucking jargons, method summary, method your ass, then field detail. You know, remember I mentioned, I talked about the, you know, I have a section on jargons there. jargons of tech info industry, you know, all things you want to know about jargons. Okay, jargons of software industry, OOP jargons. So you have class, methods, objects, then you have let me tell you, okay, then you have the rise of static versus instance variables. Then the rise of constructors and accessors. Fuck them. Fuck the OOP constructors and accessors. Fuck. Then you have access specifiers, okay, which is actually just the scoping complexity of OOP, unnecessarily so. You have, you know, private. you have private class or whatever. Java access specify private, protected, public. They are ass. Extreme idiocy. Then you have the rise of inheritance, you know, the complexity of OOP. Then you have the rise of the class hierarchy, complexer and complexer. then the rise and mutation of interface, abuse of the word interface. Then the rise of abstract class and abstract methods. Then the rise of iterators and enumerators, embraced by Python and all the OOP idiots. You have iterators and enumerators. Then later on, then you have the generators in Java, in JavaScript now. You know, iterators, enumerators, and generators. And okay, I need to get my new glasses. Then jargon polymorphism. You know, OOP fuck and Java fuck. Jargons, okay? So you can see what. Okay, I'm rambling non-stop by now. I hope you like it. So, do you like it? So, okay, Java. Okay, so where are we? Where were we? So we were talking about documentation. We were talking about what's there to talk about documentation. And by the way, even though Java Java documentation, okay, you are looking at Java documentation, is one of the best. Okay, even I despise the Java language. The Java documentation is one of the most professional, well-written documentation in the entire human-animal computing history. Okay, Java documentation. Even though I don't like the language, I disagree with many of the language. I despise the OOP and Java. But we are judging, if we are judging documentation, Java documentation you are looking at is one of the best in the in entire industry. Very different style. Like I can start, I can talk nonstop on, and then, but anyway, Java doc, okay, is one of the best. And what are the other best? For example, PHP doc is also one of the best. PHP. Okay, let me tell you. In my by now 30 years of reading documentation, obsessed about reading documentation. I have to read every detail of the words. Unix man page, Perl documentation. I have read entirety of the Perl documentation, and more than one time, word by word. And also I've read 5 or so books of Perl documentation back in the 1990s, 1999. Anyway, that's digression, okay? I read too many, more than all of you have combined. I would dare to say, more than all of you in my Vscode. The documentation you read combined all together is less than, all of you people is less than the documentation I have read, computer technology documentations, including programming languages or Unix, Linux, Mac, operating system documentations. Okay, so let me just tell you now, what are the best documentations, okay, I know of, I've read. Wolfram Language Mathematica, okay? Let me show you each one, okay? Wolfram Language documentation, perfect, the impeccable, okay? That's one thing. JavaScript documentation, Java, like I said, Java, the most professional. Doesn't matter, I'm not saying, because I XahTV like certain style, therefore, if it's written in this style I like, then it's good. If it's written in another style I don't like, then it's no good. No, it's not like that at all. I'm trying to emphasize this. Java documentation, although I hate the language, and Mathematica, Wolfram language. Let me show you a page, okay? Let me show you, let me turn on JavaScript. Java documentation and the Wolfram language documentation. Okay, let's see language overview. Let me show you. And the Wolfram language documentation is both the best documentation ever in human-animal history documentation of technical documentation. Okay, they have entirely different styles. Okay, because for one thing, Java, the language, is a OOP class-based or object-oriented language, while Wolfram language is a symbolic functional programming language like Lisp. It's kind of like a family of Lisp language. So the two languages are entirely different, and possibly and partly because that their documentation style, their organization and style is very different. Okay, but both of them are the best documentation ever. Very different style. Okay, you can try to look at them. Okay, so these two are great documentation. Now let's PHP documentation. Okay, PHP documentation is also one of the best. Okay, I will tell you, because I've read entirety of it around 2005. Every word. 1,000, how many pages? 1,000 pages or something. In fact, for several years, I have the entire manual mirrored on my website, XahTV.info, PHP and also Python, and also the entire Java documentation. That's the entire Java documentation is 500 megabytes. It's close to 1 gigabyte, I think. Anyway, You can go to XahTV.info archive, you know, the Wayback Machine. You can find it, you know, for a period of time. I have the entire Python, PHP, and also Java documentation mirrored on my site because I linked to it because I'm writing tutorials. Anyway, so another great documentation is PHP, okay? Now, PHP writing is pretty lousy, okay? In terms of the technical writing, it's not that great. In terms of organization, it's not that great, okay? Because, well, PHP is kind of a sloppy, you know, it's a very practical language. It has no pretensions to be, you know, some computer science like the Python fuckheads. You know, they pretend they are the computer science, or the scheme lisp. You know, they pretend they are the minimal, they are the best design. You know, PHP has nothing like that. It's just for average coders. For you don't know what you are doing, but you need to create a website. You use PHP. That's why it's extremely popular, practical. So whenever you have a PHP question, you look their documentation, you search it, the web, you'll find it right away, and with tons of examples. Okay, let's show you an example. Let's say array. Okay, can we find so the writing and you know, so in terms of writing or organization or, you know, technical perfectionism, you know, the writing style is not that great, but it's the most practical in the sense that if you are programming in, you know, I don't know, you know, in a language, PHP, you can find what you need. You can find the answer you need to know when you code PHP because there are documentation, okay, and lots of examples. Now, let's see, control structure, okay, namespace, class and objects, functions, expressions, constant, variable, okay, operators. Where's data structure? I want to go to the array section. I haven't read it for a long time, so I don't remember. Generators, okay, the fuck. Language reference, types, expressions, operators, control structures, class and object. Now, where's the data structure though? You know, so anyway, so the easiest way is just search for PHP array, okay? And also they have a systematic URL. You can directly jump to it. I know because I wrote the Emacs function to do that. There it is, okay? Okay, we don't want W3 schools. The fucked W3 schools. There, okay, PHP array. You see, you find it right away, the first item. Okay, so here, for example, so here is a, you know, down to earth practical example I'm demonstrating to you right now. We're talking about documentation. Right away, you find when you want to code PHP array, how does it work? You know, you find it right away. And here is an actual example of PHP documentation. You can read and you can see their writing style. You can look into detail their writing style, and we talked about how do they format their you know, the options, you know, the syntax. How do they you know, for example, you can see this part is white. You know, how do they highlight or part of or code example, things like that. Okay, lots of things to dig into. You know, if you are if this is a subject you want to get into, okay, documentation, okay. So array, so you can see syntax, then note, okay. So sometimes you have notes, then example 1, okay. There it is, okay. So I would claim, in my opinion, PHP documentation is one of the best from a practicality point of view, okay. Of course, that doesn't mean, you know, like I mentioned before, Mathematica. That doesn't mean Mathematica doc is not the practical, or Java. They are also both very good, but what I'm saying is that PHP, in particular, what stands out for PHP documentation, all things considered, is that they are the most practical. You know, you just find, doesn't matter where you know what's your question, you find the answer. PHP, okay, great documentation. So Java, Wolfram language, PHP, these are the greatest documentation. There are more, okay. PowerShell, okay. Let me show you PowerShell. PowerShell is a new thing. I started to read their documentation about PowerShell. Where's their documentation? So PowerShell overview or whatever. So I need to turn on JavaScript. So let's do. So refresh. Okay, so you are looking at PowerShell documentation. So here is basically the left panel, learning PowerShell. Those are tutorials. PowerShell tutorials is not so good. Okay, let me also mention, in a documentation of a programming language, often there are two parts, often separate. Okay, one part is the tutorial, then another part is the documentation. Okay, now depends on the language. Sometimes they, some language only have the official documentation. For example, Java. Okay, Java, for example, we showed Java's. So you are looking at the official documentation. There is also a tutorial of Java, official tutorial. But however, the official tutorial is separate. It's entirely separate. Has nothing to do with the documentation. So that's what I'm saying. Typically, a programming language, they have a tutorial part and the documentation part or reference. They are usually separate. But depending on the language, sometimes they are like in one place, sometimes they are not. Okay, so in the case of Java, the Java tutorial is entirely separate from the Java language, the API documentation. And also the Java documentation is superb, okay, but the Java tutorial for some microsystem is the worst fuck possible. The Java tutorial, okay, the official Java tutorial by some microsystems beginning around 1997, because I read it. Okay, in fact, I have articles about it. It's somewhere here. Okay, I have quite a Java interface inanity. You see, I'm citing some of the here you are looking at the Java. Wait, no, not here. Okay, so here you are looking at the official Java tutorial. What is an interface? This is funny. Okay, let me read it. Okay, so this is a official Java tutorial from some microsystems, and this one is a screenshot from 2005. Okay, let me read. It's trying to explain what's an interface. Okay, in English, an interface is a device or a system that unrelated entities use to interact. In English, okay, not in Germany, not in Chinese, but in English, an interface is a device. It's a device or a system. Okay, a interface is a device or a system that unrelated entities use to interact. So there are certain unrelated. There, in the universe, there are entities, and there are unrelated entities. And these entities, they want to interact. And so they use a thing called interface that is a device or a system. This is the, this is the technical writing at its worst. I don't know whoever fuckhead wrote this. What is an interface? Incomprehensible. It not just incomprehensible, it's also incompletely wrong. The fucking interface is a device or a system. It's a device or a system. What system? Operating system or car engine system? What device? You mean a pen? You mean like a pen or a hammer? What the fuck is these idiots? Yeah, but it's official from some microsystems, official tutorial of the Java tutorial. Trademark. You see that TM trademarked. Of course, by now they don't have that passage. I don't think they have that passage anymore. Yeah. But back then, this is all popular, all the nerds, the fuckheads, the Unix philosophy, the C coder. I disagree with it. They are saying, oh, Java, look at the Java, go read Java tutorial. Fucking idiots. So anyway, so back to previous topic. So I was saying, typically, programming language documentation, they have the tutorial section, they have the language reference or the documentation for the language section. They are typically separate. In the Java case, they are entirely separate. And the Java documentation is superb, while the Java tutorial is the worst fuck possible. In the Python, in the Wolfram language case, the tutorial and, of course, they also have the tutorial and the reference section separate. So you can see, let me show you, okay? So for example, language overview, then let's see, you click on table, which is a function, okay? Then you go down, you can see related guides. So you have, so there you see the tutorials. So again, like I said, it's separate. So here's a tutorial on how do you do repetitive operations. So they not talk about table, they also talk about do or other constructs. And they have several tutorials. So this is their style. They kind of separate into several things. So they have a tutorial for whenever you need to do vectors and matrices, and whenever you need to making tables of values or evaluation in iterative functions, or tensors. Tensors is basically nested matrices, linear algebra. So why are they here? Why are they in this tutorial section of the table function reference? Well, because table is actually generating vectors or matrices or tensors, depending, or trees, depending your point of view, depending on what you use it for. So anyway, so I'm demonstrating one of the approach, the Wolfram language, and you can see tutorials here. Then they have guides. Wolfram language is huge. So PHP. Now the tutorial section of the PHP language is part of the official documentation, I believe. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there you see, getting started, an introduction and simple tutorial. I remember I read this back in 2005. Okay, a simple tutorial to get you started. Now, of course, it's been 10 years. There are changes of PHP. Documentation, they all improve. For example, the Wolfram language documentation I read mostly in 1990s, 3 times, 1,000 pages. I talked about printed books. Okay, so let me. Okay, I kind of rambled in this talk show, and this is like almost like non-stop. Let me show you the Mathematica book. Okay. So this is the book, I read, back in mostly 1990s. I read it 3 times in different years, cover to cover, every word of it. and now today I'm making 2021 June 14th. I'm making a collection because it's no longer printed since 2004. So I'm obsessive. I read documentation. So I made a collection of the chapters online. There's no coherent index anymore, because the evolution of Wolfram language. But for at least nostalgia, I still make I try to make a collection of the indexes that corresponds to the book I read, almost 20 years ago. So anyway, so Wolfram language, so that's the best documentation. Okay, so let's go back to Java, Wolfram language, Mathematica, and PHP. These are the greatest documentations on earth. And PowerShell. Today there's more, okay, because now there's more, technology progresses. Now I'm doing videos. That's tech progress, and phones. We all have phones. So also the documentation, programmers have been getting better at documentation. So today there's more and more good documentations, as opposed to in the 1990s or early 2000s, the Unix man page by this nerd They had no idea what they're talking about. They just grab and the Unix fuckheads. No idea. But they don't know what is technical writing. They drivel about it, but they have no idea. Okay, so PowerShell is another great documentation. So first of all, you have the PowerShell. You have a tutorial section, part of their official documentation, but those are not good. Okay, they are written by different people. I know because I looked in the past 1-2 months. I've been reading a lot of PowerShell documentation. So you have install, then you have learning PowerShell. So this is a tutorial, kind of a mess. Okay, and I don't like their writing. I don't think it's good. The PowerShell tutorial. By the way, I have my own. So if you want to learn PowerShell, you might try to give my tutorial a try. Basics. Introduction to PowerShell. Then you can start to use the PowerShell reference. Okay. So I've been writing my PowerShell tutorial. The best part is common examples. So if you came from Unix, Bash, you feel like how do you do things on Windows, but you don't want to install Bash, which is a good idea. You do, on Windows, just use PowerShell. Okay. So let me show you the common example. So you came from Unix, Bash, grep, find, those kind of crap, cat, ls, then you can jump to this page and to start to, how to create a new file, touch, open file by default app, new directory, make the, and so on, copy and so on. So you might check out this my tutorial. Okay. Now back to PowerShell. Okay. I was talking about documentation. Okay. So back to PowerShell documentation. So you have a tutorial section, not so good, but then the window, the real reference part. Okay, installing PowerShell now. Where is it? What's new? PowerShell gallery reference. Okay, reference. PowerShell is essentially a bunch of commands, collection of commands. Okay, so PowerShell core, for example, let me show you. Or Unix ls. Let me show you one example. Okay, let's get children. So typically you don't use this. You just search the web. You just type PowerShell get child item. You'll find it. Okay, but anyway, I have looked through these, so I know their structure now. PowerShell core, it's divided into several what they call modules or package. So you have PowerShell core, and the get children is the PowerShell management. Okay, so get child item. There it is. So here is the PowerShell documentation, which is analogous to the Unix man page. Okay, so what is get children? Get children is basically ls. Okay, or in the DOS dir. Okay, so you have, like the Unix tradition, you have the synapses. The Unix idiots, they call it synapses. Like, what the fuck? In PowerShell, you just start with, they don't even say what, they don't even say it's a synapses or what. So let me show. Okay, so you are looking at PowerShell, and let me magnify the font. Okay, and let's see. Okay, so let's cd XAH. Okay, cd to the XAH directory. Okay, cd to web. Okay, cd to ergo Emacs, for example. cd to Emacs. So you type let's magnify. Okay, you type that's a list of directory, just like Unix ls. Okay, you can also type ls. You see, that's an alias, by building alias by default. So you can type help okay, that will get you the full name, help child item. Okay, that's the full name. So you begin. Okay, it also says synapses. Okay, then you have the syntax. Okay, then you have description, and you have parameters and so on. It's superb, guys. Okay, let me tell you, it's superb. Okay, let's shrink. Let's get out. Okay, so PowerShell documentation is superb. They have an online version as well. Superb, because anyway, I'm not gonna get into detail. I think I rambled too long. So, am I actually still alive? Let's see how many people are watching. 9 people. So so I'm still streaming. Okay, so I've been talking for 90 minutes already. Oh, we have 14 people now. I'm talking for 19 minutes. Any comments, questions? Okay, so I think that's it. So Java, Wolfram language, PHP, PowerShell, these are the best documentations. There's one more. Let me tell you one more. Golang, okay? Golang documentation is one of the best documentation. Okay, let me show you. You go to documents, then you go to this. You basically you want to go to the reference section. Okay. Installing Go, then we don't care about that. Documents, okay, packages, okay. Yeah, here they, again we are seeing certain different little culture or style. In Golang they don't call they are. Basically, you are looking at their official documentation or the reference section, okay? The manual for the Go language. But they don't call it, they don't call it documentation, but, in the Golang case, they call it packages, okay? But this is actually their official reference for their documentation, okay? Because this is the part you actually use if you code Golang every day. Okay. Anyway, the structure of Golang. Okay, Golang. First of all, Golang also have a tutorial section. Okay, not here. You have, for example, you go back here, tutorial getting started. This is crap. Okay, Golang tutorial is not so good. Okay, it's also, they have this is their official Golang tutorial, but of course I read it. It's not so good, but however their documentation, the real documentation, which they call packages. Okay, you click on that. This is superb. This is your bread and butter. If you code Golang every day, that's what you need to read about, and so. They have a tutorial, they have official, the reference section, the kind of the manual of the language. They also have another one, the language specification, okay? Now, is it somewhere here? Now, I don't remember whether it's linked here. I mean, of course it is linked here somewhere. The reference, the language specification. Now, this part I haven't mentioned before. So for example, for Java, for example, for Java, you also have a language spec. Again, this happens to be entirely different thing. Wolfram language, you don't have a spec because it's not open source. You kind of have a spec anyway. You kind of have a spec, but not because it's not a open source programming language, so you don't have the full spec for you to implement it. But Java does. Okay, Java has a language spec and also has a virtual machine spec. Then PHP doesn't have a spec because who needs a spec? You just it's a practical kind of language. You don't there's no. I don't believe. I don't think I'm wrong, but I don't. So as far as I know, there's no spec for PHP language. Maybe Hacklang does. Hacklang is Facebook's version of typed PHP language invented about 10 years ago. Anyway, PHP. Then you have PowerShell. PowerShell, I don't think you have a spec, but it's very well. Anyway, that's another side point I'm trying to mention. Golang has a spec, okay? Also, it's superb. So Golang, the reference, the documentation, and the Golang language specification is superb. However, their Golang tutorial, the official one, is not so good. Okay, so Golang, okay, too many, okay? I can go on for another 3 hours at least about documentation and or giving you a different example of different language. For example, Python. Okay, this one is a lot of people probably want to hear my opinion. Python's. Okay, let me finish. Let me talk about Python stock, and that's it for today. And by the way, you know, if you want, so I also have a tutorial on Golang, of course. So you should try my tutorial. Okay, this is fairly, you know, this is beyond a simple intro. Okay, because I love Golang. I think it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. Much better than Common Lisp. Okay, study Golang. It has a future. Not just that, it's a simple language. It's super fast, much faster than Common Lisp. It's very simple. You can master the whole thing in 1 week. Master the entire Go language in 1 week if you really try. On the other hand, Common Lisp, maybe 3 years, full-time 3 years. I doubt even if you can master it. And it's not, you know, it's not as Golang. Okay, forget about Common Lisp. You can master simple, fast, and it's in industry, one of the most popular language. Okay, used by industries, heavy industries. Not some Joe like Sali is writing a Emacs Lisp package for you to play with. Not like that. This is billion dollars industry, $billion applications used by, you know, you write some Go, you know, nuclear facility or whatever. Usually not that, you know, like you know, whatever Google does. Okay, Golang. Okay, $billion industry like JavaScript. So you learn Golang, you also find a job if you need it. You know, you can learn it for hobby or whatever. Golang. Okay, Golang. So the language is fantastic. The manual, the reference is superb. You know, to the point, precise, no babbling, no random fucking propaganda or open source propaganda. Okay, Golang. So yeah, so I also have a tutorial I wrote. You know, you might try. So I'm gonna shut down. Okay, I'm gonna talk about Python. I'm gonna shut down. BLM banner. Okay, Golang. Yeah, nothing much you can do these days because let me go to Python. Okay, let me show you the Python. Where I'm gonna talk about the Python idiocy, the extreme idiocy of the Python fox, both the language and documentation. But the Python people don't know. They you know, you will see, I'm sure, or some of you are Python fanatics. You don't know what you're talking about. So Golang, do they have like you know, where's the yeah, actually, I don't want to go over there because then Google is gonna ban me. Google is gonna censor my YouTube. Okay, let's forget about that. I didn't see I missed it. Okay, Python doc. Python doc is the worst fuck in every way, in every aspect of the documentation I talked about today. The organization, the writing style, the content quality, the precision, you know, accuracy and precision of what your documentation, the organization, you know, and the function format I talked about. Every aspect, Python documentation is the worst fuck possible. And also examples, no examples. Python, you know, they are the computer science are us. We don't you know, we don't write examples. The Python fuck. And the Guido idiots, the Guido van Rossum idiots, they think he you know, in his mind, he created the best language for people to learn programming. It's the extreme opposite. So Python doc, okay, so there you go, the familiar Python documentation. So you have this, you know, you have these headers, you know, this one, tutorial, okay, start here, okay, like I mentioned, you know, languages, they have a section on tutorial. The Python tutorial is not so good, okay. The Python doc is one of the worst, okay, but anyway, the tutorial is not so good. It's okay, but it's not so good. Then the library reference, you know, first of all, the organization. Let me talk about why the Python documentation sucks donkey ass, sucks to the extreme, okay. First of all, what you see, is about organization of the documentation. So, okay, what's new? Okay, that's what's new. Okay, tutorial. Okay, then library reference. Oh, okay, keep this under your pillow. You see, now they add a little, like this is, how do you classify this epigraph, kind of like a nerds thing, it's so here this part shows their culture. They're telling you they are the Pythoners, they are Pythonic. So instead of just saying library reference, they have to say keep this under your pillow, go fuck yourself. Then you have language reference, describe syntax and language elements. Okay, so I can tell you what. So let me tell you what they are. So the library reference is kind of like analogous to the Golang's packages. This is the bread and butter. This is the part you have to go to the most when you actually code in this language. So in the same way, Python, they call it library reference. Okay, similar to Golang's packages. Okay. So that's what that is. Okay, then you have a language reference. So this part is like I talked about before. This is a language specification, kind of. Okay, basically it's kind of a formal approach to the Python language syntax. Okay, so if you are going to implement Python language, this part is the most helpful to you. But however, if you are a Python programmer, for example, you forgot what's the syntax for Python in Python lambda or for loop, that's also the part you go to. So they serve it's kind of fuzzy. This is part of the reason why the Python language really sucks in so many ways. On one hand, if you are really trying to implement Python, you want a very specific technical detailed specification. This Python language reference will not do. Okay. On the other hand, if you are just if you are a Python coder, you are not trying to implement Python, but you just want to, you forgot what's the syntax for lambda. You also go here. So it's pretty bad because you go through then there's the idiotic writing. They don't know what they're talking about. It's fuck. Then there's also pretension. The Python fuckheads, which inherited from Guido von Rosen, tends to they want to pretend something bigger than they are. Like Python coders, I like to call them. They are the computer science are us. They think themselves like that. So they have pretension. They try to choke up their use fancy jargons that doesn't make sense. The standard type hierarchy your ass. They don't know what they're talking about. We try, especially this page, data model. Okay, they don't know what they're talking about. Trivals. Yeah, and okay. So back here. So reference. Okay, so you have section on library reference. Okay, then you have a section on language reference. Now let me make extra comments. Okay, they're interesting. You see, on library reference, they added this, a little jolly epitaph, keep this under your pillow. But then you also have a subtitle for the language reference section, which says, describe syntax and language elements. So these two, the subtitle for these two sections are in sharp contrast. So one is kind of like a joke, what's the proper term to describe this? I don't know. I have to think. But anyway, it's unnecessary. It's just add on epigraph. On the other hand, here the subtitle for this section is actually very, very functional. They want to make sure you understand. Okay, this section is actually describes the syntax and language element, while the other section is keep this under your pillow. I don't like it. Okay, they're fucking idiots. Anyway, so then there's Python how-to. God, in-depth documentation on a specific topic. Then very confusing. Okay, let me tell you, Python documentation. Then installing Python modules. Then distributing Python modules. What the fuck? Publishing modules for installation by others. Then extending and embedding tutorials for C and C++. There's a huge amount of inconsistency, okay? Extending and embedding and Python C API, okay? Reference for C++ program. Okay, let me comment, okay? So before I commented about the style of the subtitle in relation to their section, So here it's kind of a joke, keep this under your pillow. And here is very functional, describe syntax and language elements. A lot inconsistency going on here, okay? So here you see, here is a tutorial for C and C++ programmers. What the fuck are you talking about? So you are telling me you have a section for C and C++ programmers. You mean if I want to learn C, I go to your page, right? Because it's a tutorial for C and C++ programmers, right? If I'm a C and C++ programmers, I write compilers in some company, and then you have a section reference for C and C++ programmers. So you mean I need to go to your Python documentation, this section to have a reference about C? No, of course not. What they mean is that so this section extending and embedding is about extending and embedding Python, but the main audience will be C and C++ programmers, right? Because basically they imply that to extend Python or embed Python, you need to write in C and C++. So that's what, and also, and also they are trying also to say they by implication, and also they try to, and by explicit mention, this is a tutorial. So this part is kind of like a tutorial for those who wants to extend and embed Python. And also they imply you have to know the C++ language. So they don't know what they are writing. They don't know what they are thinking. They pack these drivels together in one place. That's what they are doing. This is how we dive into technical details of technical writing. Right now I'm taking apart the logic, the logical analysis. What do they mean? What they mean? Very confusing. Okay, you might think, okay, but you read it, you understand it. Not really. Okay. I can go on talk another hour about that. Why is that so? Anyway, so then here you have a reference for C++ programmers. You see, now you compare these two subtitles. So one is a tutorial for C++ programmers. The other one is a reference for C++ programmers. So you might think, okay, these two sections are two different aspects of the of the same kind of thing. One is more tutorial-like, one is more reference-like, but not so, because these two are actually different topics. This one is Python and C API, which is a little bit similar to extending and embedding Python, but it's actually a different topic. So I'm telling. So this is my dissecting the Python idiocy of the Python documentation. And look, here is the propaganda, the kind of the propaganda comes in. FAQ, okay? FAQ is a frequently asked questions. Okay, great. Usually people have a lot of questions, and here is a collection of the common questions and answers, of course. By writing by English itself, frequently asked questions, FAQ implies answers, okay? No idiot don't know that. Okay, so but they have to say, these Python idiots, they have to add with answers, as if you don't know, and as if they try to say, look, our documentation is so great. We have FAQ, not just that, but with answers. They have to say that. idiocy of the Python documentation. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you guys. Urbit, okay, I don't know nothing about Urbit. Urbit is from this very interesting guy, the mode bug, Urbit. It's beyond me, actually. So I tried to spend some time to understand. I tried, only actually 10 minutes. It's something beyond me. I have to, because I have so many things I need to study first. But this seems to be like, new tech based on the blockchain or something related. So I do want to know this technology, but first of all, I need to really understand blockchain well. Blockchain, the concept I know. I did study it, so I know the blockchain, but I need to go get deeper. I need to actually code blockchain, so to understand Bitcoin and so on. So I don't know. I think it's interesting, but I don't know nothing about it. One of the interesting things, the guy, who created the guy who created this thing. You so biased towards about Python. Why am I? Of course I am. I can see. I admit and accept I'm biased towards Python. But however, if you ask me, where am I biased Python? I don't. At least I wouldn't think so. I think my opinion on Python is actually fair. So that's why everyone is biased. But so there are two aspects of being biased. One is that you fully are aware, you are intentional. You kind of there's something you don't like, and the reason you don't like it, not because all things considered it's really bad or something. It's only because it doesn't fit your style. Okay, so that. So that in that sense you are biased, but it. But to me, my opinion about Python is that I don't think I'm biased. I don't think, it's what I'm trying to say is that I don't think, I'm not saying something, for example, when I talk about documentation, even Java, I talk about Java, the language. I despise Java, the language. I hate the Java virtual machine, but their documentation, I would say it's one of the best. So in that sense, so on the other hand, I love Mathematica, so it's also got great documentation. So is there something I truly love whose documentation is bad? Some language or something. Anyway, I can't think of now. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is that, to me, I don't think my opinion about Python, the language or the documentation, is biased. Like if you ask me, I cannot tell you where I think I was biased. I think my opinion is pretty fair. Because, I don't like, okay, so I like functional programming. Okay, Python for a fact is not, is because Guido van Rossum, he doesn't like functional programming. Okay, so I can accept, for example, Java. Okay, Java is OOP. Java is not functional. But okay, Java is, so Java is a very well designed, it's OOP, okay, so, but I don't attack Java because it's not functional, okay. But meanwhile, Python, Python, they are not functional, but they pretend they are. That's the thing, you can see in their documentation, they pretend, anyway, I don't like Python, okay. Blockchain. Yeah, I don't have any article on blockchain. I don't know much about it. So that's it for today. Thank you. That's a 2 hours. Oh, today is a long one. 2 hours. This is the longest one I have, I think. Okay, thank you guys for watching. That's it for today. Bye. If you like my stuff, put money in my pocket. Okay, donate in my, go to my website. check out my tutorials, comment on my YouTube, comment and spread it, post to other people, to other, to your blog or whatever. And check out my tutorials. That's it for today. Thank you guys. Bye. So 2 hours. Yeah, I'm gonna get I have still some coffee. I'm gonna get a drink. So I'm shutting down in 1 minute. Then I have to gather all the link we talked about today and put them together in my in my talk show page. What the fuck is this glyph matrix? Java is also very huge, complicated language. So basically you want to go to Java land, okay? So then you get into the familiar things like booleans, boolean, byte class, character class. Okay, so I need to collect all these links and put into my XahTalk show.